So we're in the midst of doing this restoration work right here. We're working with the hydraulic lime mortars. You can see it on my Hawk. This is called a Hawk tuck pointer. A couple different size tuck pointers we have here for different widths of mortar joint. We're doing a colonial ridge joint with this lime mortar. We've already cut out all of the joints, removed the Portland cement. You can see the original limestone here, and you can see the joint, the replacement joint that we're putting in. This mortar stands a little bit proud of the actual stone. It isn't a concave joint. So the way we apply this mortar is all by hand. So we basically will push the mortar into the joint, and then we'll cut the joint profile and remove any excess. So essentially that's the way a ridge joint is put on. In different areas, you have to modify the joint to be able to fit in. We've already gone through and filled in gaps where there were large voids in the wall. So we put smaller stone in to take up those gaps, and then we work around those stones. When we go vertical, you have to pick the mortar up. Make sure we tuck it back in as far as we can. Sometimes we have to switch out to a smaller tuck pointer to really get the mortar back in. And then you connect all of the dots. The way this stone is laid, sometimes there's not very much of a mortar joint between the joints. It's because the stone was set in a traditional fashion. So basically this mortar joint just floats right over top of that area. And that's why we want to have the right consistency mortar. We want to make sure that the mortar, that the substrate, whatever it is, brick or stone, that the substrate is damp and not overly wet, but damp, so that it doesn't absorb the moisture out of the lime mortar. What we want to do is take care of this mortar for the next several days and make sure that the mortar itself is curing out nice and slow, not drying too fast. That's why we have burlap up. We've already cured the upper portion of this farmhouse here. And essentially, usually we work from the very top down. We make sure we're keeping everything damp around us as we work down. So there's a process to it, and you only get so much done each day. And then you have to brush over the joint. So what we'll do is, after this has set sufficiently, right now it's way too wet, we'll brush over it a little bit, we'll smooth out any rough areas. We'll take a churn brush and go over it just to weather it. And then after it's set, we will wash over it with a mild masonry cleaner to clean up the surface and unify and get any mortar off the stone. So the whole purpose of this mortar joint is to keep water from getting into the stone wall. And these stone walls are laid up with a mud clay bedding mortar, which means that the interior cavity of this wall is actually more or less dirt. It has some lump lime in and some aggregate from probably local sands, but mostly it's clay and lime. And originally, when these were built and constructed, this building was constructed in 1820, this mortar joint would have been made out of a lime mortar, lime putty from a lime kiln. And basically they would have burnt either shells or they would have burnt limestone, really good quality limestone, made a lime putty. And then that lime putty was put to local sands, and they created this mortar joint. Now after this hardens, it becomes hard enough and dense enough that water doesn't penetrate it. And basically that keeps the stonework, the dirt in the wall from washing out. It's really important above window heads and below windowsills, because those are the areas where over time concentrated water can start to work its way in and then rot the beams. One of the reasons why we use the lime mortar is because the Portland cement mortars are very rigid and hard, and they can damage the stone over time or the brick. Also, the Portland cement mortars do not have any breathability. They're very, the vapor permeability of the mortar is not very high. So when the wall gets wet with the lime mortar, it dries out very quickly. And that's exactly what we want with a historic building, that it's able to breathe and able to go through the seasons and not hold any moisture in the wall. So that's the reason why we're using this mortar instead of using a cement mortar. You can see the front of the wall was repointed probably in the 1940s or 50s, and it has a ribbon joint on. It's a different joint profile. It's a more modern joint profile. It is a hard cement mortar. So over time, that cement mortar, which has probably been in maybe about 70, 75 years, has started to crack and erode the stone. And so what we want to do is remove that mortar so that we can put a more soft mortar in that will be more sensitive to the stone over time. So basically, within this mortar mix, we did add some aggregate to it. It's actually an inclusion, so we put some coal slag in it, and also there are small chips of seashells in here, oyster shells, and that'll give it some real character. After we clean the mortar, it'll have this appearance here. I just basically wet the mud right on my board to kind of wash off the cream of the lime. But when we see the interior of it, it'll have a lot of character to it. So that's something we do to kind of age it, give it an antique, distressed look, and give it some more character so it doesn't look like it was just done, yesterday. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what exactly we worked on this project so far. We have to remember we have an 1820s farmhouse, and that 1820s farmhouse has a new addition that's being built on the back. This whole project is going to be a bed and breakfast. And so as they were building the addition, the roof line for the original farmhouse was much lower than the addition, and they wanted to vault the ceiling of the original farmhouse. So to do that, they needed to take the original roof line off and raise the roof line so that it matched the addition. And then the two gables, the two stone gables, which are full thickness stone, they're about 20 inches thick, they had to be rebuilt higher all the way up to the peak. So there were a few different options that could have been done. Could have been wood siding up here, or a composite siding. Could have put brick in the upper part, but the customer chose to go with a reclaimed limestone, and that we would build a mass masonry wall. So this wall right here is 20 inches, approximately 18 to 20 inches thick, and it's built out of reclaimed stone from a barn that was torn down. It's really, really challenging and difficult to find an exact match for stone, but we did find a stone that was very similar in the area, and over time this stone will age and weather in and get its own patina and will really look good. So what we have right here is this entire peak from down at the bottom all the way up to about here, and then up. This is all new stone in this area. So we had laid it in. There's a steel beam going across here. So we had to try and match the patterns as well as we could, but still there's posts and beams in there that we were trying to cover up. So after it's been rebuilt, then we rebuilt it with lime mortar, with natural hydraulic lime. We had cut out the rest of the mortar joints and then repointed it all to unify it. Now after this has sit for approximately a week or so, we'll come over it, we'll wash it down, we'll clean it up, and that will give a finished appearance to the stonework. All of the woodwork then will be built in by the contractor, and the eaves will be recreated. And from just driving by and looking at this project, you would never know that the roof line was raised on this historic property. So it's been quite a project. One of the things that I can point out is that you have the stone, it's laid in a particular pattern. So some of the stones are laid, stone is basically like almost like a loaf of bread, where it has slices in it and the grains. And this particular type of limestone has the bedding planes, they call them, laid in going horizontal. So we can see right here that you can see the grain in the stone heading in. So we know that that stone was put in with the tail going in. So you're basically looking at the end of the stone. Other stones were turned up, and there's a few larger stones down here that we can see, this cornerstone down here, where the stone was actually turned up on edge. So the bedding planes are going vertical. So sometimes the stone is laid in going end in, sometimes it's laid in standing up. So that's just one of the techniques that they used. So next week we're planning on tearing down all the scaffolding, and we'll be able to see the full reveal of the wall. We're finishing up some of the mortar work down below, some of the repointing work. We're gonna tear this side down, and then we have a whole nother side to do. So we'll be doing the exact same process. The amount of stone that this took was probably about, I would say like 4 to 5 tons in that area. So we still have another large pile of stone on the other side to lay up and repeat the whole process. So thanks for watching today, Restoration Artisans. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can also visit us on the web at restorationartisans.com and give us a call if you have any restoration needs.